January 22, 1944, 0540 hours. A forward observation post overlooking the Rapido River Valley, 3 kilometers south of Cassino, Italy. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb sits in a concrete bunker with telephone lines running to 4 artillery batteries positioned behind the ridgeline. The receivers rest on hooks. The lines are silent. Before him, through a narrow observation slit, the valley spreads in morning darkness. Fog clings to the river. The German positions on the opposite slope are invisible but known: machine gun nests, mortar pits, a concrete pillbox covering the bridge approach. Intelligence has mapped them precisely. Webb's artillery is loaded and ranged. 36 105 howitzers, coordinates verified, fuses set for impact detonation. The fire plan has been approved by division, by corps, by 5th Army headquarters. Every level of command from battalion to army group has authorized the mission. Infantry waits 300 meters behind the observation post. 2 battalions from the 36th Infantry Division, assembled in staging areas since midnight. They will cross the river once the artillery preparation destroys the German defenses. The plan is comprehensive. The approval chain is complete. The attack will commence at 0600 hours. 20 minutes remain. Webb has executed this procedure a dozen times since landing at Salerno 4 months ago. The sequence is routine. At 0555, he will lift the first telephone receiver and speak the code word that initiates the barrage. 5 minutes of concentrated fire. Then the infantry advances. He does not reach for the telephone. He continues to observe the valley through the slit. The fog shows no sign of lifting. The 5th Army's assault across the Rapido River was planned to break through German defensive lines south of Monte Cassino and open the route to Rome. The operation involved multiple divisions attacking simultaneously at different crossing points. Webb's sector was one component of a larger coordinated offensive. The 36th Infantry Division had been assigned to force a crossing at this particular bend in the river, where the German defenses appeared weakest. Reconnaissance patrols over the previous week reported limited fortifications and infrequent German patrols. Aerial photography confirmed the intelligence assessments. The sector was considered favorable for assault. Webb commanded the artillery support for the initial crossing. His 4 batteries, 24 guns in total, had been positioned on reverse slopes to avoid German counter-battery fire. Forward observers had registered targets over 3 days, firing sporadic harassing missions to establish accurate range data without revealing the concentration of firepower being assembled. The infantry units designated for the assault had trained for river crossings at a rear area facility. They practiced boat handling, equipment loading, and immediate action drills for establishing bridgeheads. Engineers prepared assault boats, bridging materials, and demolition charges for clearing obstacles. Medical evacuation routes were established. Casualty collection points were designated and staffed. Weather conditions on January 22 were marginal. Temperature near freezing. Cloud cover complete. The fog in the valley was unexpected. Forecasts had predicted clear conditions by dawn, but the meteorological assessment had proven incorrect. Visibility at 0540 was less than 50 meters in the valley floor where the crossing would occur. The fire plan called for a rolling barrage. Artillery would strike German positions along the opposite bank, then shift deeper into German territory as American infantry advanced. The technique required precise timing and coordination. Observation during the barrage was essential to adjust fire if impacts fell short or long. Without observation, the artillery would fire blindly based on pre-calculated coordinates. Webb's position overlooked the valley from an elevation that should have provided clear observation of the entire target area, but the fog layer was thick enough to obscure everything below 300 meters elevation. The German positions were invisible. The river itself was invisible. The landing zones where American infantry would emerge from assault boats could not be observed. American artillery doctrine in 1944 emphasized overwhelming firepower delivered with precision timing. The lessons of North Africa and Sicily had been incorporated into operational planning. Artillery preparation was considered essential for reducing casualties during river assault operations. Infantry commanders depended on it. Webb had trained at Fort Sill in 1941, learning fire direction procedures and coordination with infantry. He understood the doctrine thoroughly. The artillery barrage served multiple purposes: destroy enemy positions, suppress defensive fire, create smoke and dust to obscure defender observation, and demonstrate to attacking infantry that they were supported. The psychological effect was as important as the material destruction. The approval process for this particular fire mission had been extensive. Division artillery officers reviewed the fire plan in detail. Corps artillery added their concurrence. Army-level planners verified that ammunition expenditure was justified by the operational objective. Each level of command signed authorization documents. The paper trail was complete. The infantry battalions waiting behind Webb's position expected the artillery preparation to commence on schedule. Their officers had briefed troops that the barrage would last exactly 5 minutes, then cease. 30 seconds after the last shell impacted, the infantry would begin crossing. This timing had been rehearsed. The men understood the sequence. They were ready. Standard procedure called for forward observers to maintain continuous communication with firing batteries during the mission. Adjustments would be transmitted if impacts deviated from planned target areas. If a round fell short and endangered friendly forces, the mission would be halted immediately. If German positions proved more extensive than mapped, additional fire could be requested. Observation enabled flexibility. The doctrine also specified conditions under which fire missions should be delayed or canceled: mechanical failures, communication breakdowns, change in tactical situation. But weather was addressed only briefly in training materials. Missions proceeded unless conditions prevented accurate ranging or created unacceptable risk to friendly forces. At 05:45 hours, 15 minutes before scheduled execution, Webb received a telephone call from Division Artillery Headquarters. The staff officer confirmed that all batteries reported ready. Ammunition was loaded. Crews were at firing positions. Authorization remained in effect. The mission would proceed as planned unless Webb reported a condition requiring postponement. Webb acknowledged the call without requesting postponement. He stated that his position was manned and observation was being maintained. He did not mention the fog. The call ended. The 15-minute countdown continued. 05:55 hours, 5 minutes until execution. Webb sits at the observation post with the 4 telephone receivers on the table before him. Each connects to a battery. The first call would initiate the sequence. The others would follow in prescribed intervals. His hand rests on the table, 6 inches from the first receiver. He does not reach for it. 05:56. The fog remains unchanged, dense, uniform, impenetrable below his elevation. The valley floor is invisible. The German positions cannot be observed. The impact points cannot be seen. Webb calculates rapidly. The fire plan is based on coordinates. The coordinates are accurate, verified by previous registration fires. The artillery will hit the designated points, but he will not be able to observe the impacts. He will not know if the shells are achieving their purpose. He will not be able to adjust fire if circumstances require it. 05:57. 3 minutes remaining. The telephone in the corner rings, the line to division. Webb lifts the receiver. The staff officer asks for confirmation that the mission is proceeding. Webb says he is observing weather conditions. The officer asks if there is a problem. Webb does not answer immediately. The silence extends. 5 seconds. 10. The officer asks again if the mission is proceeding on schedule. Webb states that visibility in the target area is severely limited. The officer asks if this prevents execution. Webb says it prevents observation during execution. The officer states that the coordinates are verified and the mission does not require real-time observation. It is a preparatory barrage on fixed positions. Webb can execute without visual confirmation. The infantry assault depends on the artillery preparation. The timing for the entire divisional attack is synchronized to this fire mission. Postponement would disrupt operations across the sector. 05:58. Webb does not respond. The officer asks for confirmation that the mission will proceed. Webb says he is making that assessment now. The officer says the assessment must be completed within 2 minutes. Webb acknowledges and ends the call. He looks at the 4 telephone receivers. His hand remains on the table. He does not reach for them. 05:59. 1 minute until scheduled execution. The fog does not lift. Webb does not make the call. 06:00 passes. The artillery does not fire. The silence extends beyond 06:00 hours. The artillery batteries wait at their guns. Crews stand ready. No code word arrives. The mission has not been initiated. The prescribed time has passed without the expected order. Battery commanders begin calling Webb's observation post. Each asks if technical difficulties have delayed the mission. Webb responds that he is assessing conditions. He provides no estimate for when the mission will proceed. The battery commanders acknowledge and return to waiting. At the infantry staging areas, battalion commanders check their watches. 06:05, 06:10. The artillery preparation has not commenced. Radio operators contact division headquarters requesting information. Division has no information. The fire mission was approved and scheduled. Execution is at the discretion of the forward observer who controls the batteries assigned to the sector. At 06:15, the division artillery commander personally calls Webb's observation post. He asks why the mission has not been executed. Webb states that observation conditions are inadequate. The commander asks Webb to describe the conditions. Webb describes the fog, its density, its coverage of the target area, the impossibility of observing impacts. The artillery commander states that the fire plan does not require observation. It is a map-based mission against fixed coordinates. Observation is desirable but not essential. Webb can execute the mission with confidence that rounds will impact as planned. The division's attack schedule requires that this fire mission be completed within the next 30 minutes, or the entire operation will need to be postponed. Webb asks what reconnaissance information exists regarding German positions in the fog-covered area. The commander says reconnaissance was completed 3 days ago. German positions are mapped. Webb asks if any information exists about German troop movements or reinforcements since that reconnaissance. The commander says intelligence reports no significant changes. Webb says he will not execute the fire mission under current visibility conditions. The artillery commander is silent for several seconds. He asks if Webb is refusing to execute an authorized mission. Webb says he is determining that the mission cannot be executed safely under present conditions. The distinction is procedural but significant. The artillery commander states that he is forwarding Webb's assessment to division command for decision. Webb acknowledges. The call ends. The fog remains. The artillery remains silent. Infantry continues waiting in staging areas. At 06:30, the division commander personally calls Webb. The conversation is brief. The division commander asks if conditions have changed. Webb says they have not. The commander states that the division attack is being postponed pending improved visibility. All units are to maintain readiness. The assault will be rescheduled when conditions permit observation of the target area. Webb acknowledges. The call ends. The attack has been canceled. Webb's decision not to execute the fire mission was based on his assessment that firing artillery without observation capability created unacceptable risks. The risks were tactical and procedural rather than moral. Without observation, Webb could not verify that rounds were impacting in German positions, rather than falling short into the river or overshooting into areas where American patrols might be operating. The coordinates were verified, but coordinates represented theoretical impact points calculated from maps. Actual impacts could vary due to ammunition inconsistencies, weapon wear, or atmospheric conditions affecting trajectory. The fire plan assumed that observation would enable adjustment if initial rounds revealed errors in the calculations. Without observation, errors would go undetected. The entire barrage might miss its intended targets. The German defenses might remain intact. Infantry crossing the river would encounter resistance that the artillery was supposed to have neutralized. Webb also considered that the German positions were mapped from reconnaissance conducted 3 days earlier. German forces were known to adjust defensive positions regularly. Machine gun nests could have been relocated. New fortifications might have been constructed. Without current observation, Webb would be firing at positions that might no longer exist or might have changed configuration. The doctrine authorizing forward observers to control fire missions implicitly granted them authority to assess when conditions permitted effective fire. Webb interpreted his authority to include withholding fire when effectiveness could not be verified. He was not refusing the mission. He was determining that the mission could not be completed as planned under present conditions. His decision was also influenced by his understanding that artillery preparation was intended to support infantry assault. If the artillery fire was ineffective due to lack of observation, the infantry would be endangered. They would cross the river expecting German positions to be suppressed or destroyed. If those positions remained operational, casualties would be severe. Webb recognized that postponing the attack created operational difficulties. The division's schedule was disrupted. Coordination with adjacent units was complicated. The element of surprise might be compromised. But these consequences were command-level concerns. His responsibility was to execute fire missions effectively when conditions permitted. He assessed that conditions did not permit effective execution. The conversation with the division artillery commander had clarified that his decision would force postponement of the entire attack. But that outcome followed from the tactical assessment. The attack depended on the artillery preparation. The artillery preparation could not be executed without observation. Therefore, the attack had to be postponed. At 07:00 hours, the fog began to dissipate. By 08:00, visibility in the valley had improved to approximately 300 meters. German positions became partially visible through breaks in the remaining haze. Webb maintained observation but did not request resumption of the fire mission. At 09:00, Division headquarters notified Webb that the attack had been rescheduled for the following morning, January 23, at 06:00 hours. Weather forecasts predicted clear conditions. The artillery fire plan would be executed as originally designed. Webb acknowledged the notification. The infantry battalions withdrew from staging areas and returned to bivouac positions further behind the lines. Equipment was secured. Assault boats were moved back to covered storage. The men were informed that the operation had been postponed 24 hours. No explanation was provided beyond reference to weather conditions. Artillery crews at the 4 batteries unloaded their guns and returned ammunition to storage. The weapons were cleaned and inspected. No rounds had been fired. The barrels remained cold. The crews did not discuss the canceled mission extensively. Postponements occurred regularly in combat operations. This instance was unremarkable. Webb remained at the observation post through the morning, continuing to monitor the valley as visibility improved. By noon, the German positions were clearly visible. He could see the pillbox covering the bridge approach. He could identify individual machine gun positions. The intelligence maps were accurate. The German defenses were positioned exactly as reconnaissance had indicated. At 14:00, Webb was relieved by another forward observer and returned to the artillery battalion command post. He reported to the battalion commander and provided a written summary of the morning's events. The report was brief. He stated that visibility conditions had prevented effective observation and that he had assessed the fire mission could not be executed safely. The battalion commander acknowledged the report without comment. That evening, Webb attended the division planning conference for the rescheduled attack. The fire plan was reviewed without modification. The same targets, the same timing, the same procedures. The only change was the date. Weather was forecast to be clear. The attack would proceed the following morning. On January 23 at 06:00 hours under clear skies with full visibility, Webb initiated the artillery barrage. The fire mission was executed exactly as originally planned. Observation confirmed that impacts were accurate. German positions were engaged effectively. The infantry crossed the river as scheduled. The assault encountered heavy resistance. German defenses were stronger than intelligence had assessed. The attack failed to achieve its objectives. Heavy casualties were sustained. The operation was terminated after 2 days of fighting without establishing a secure bridgehead. No official report documented Webb's decision to cancel the January 22 fire mission as a distinct event requiring investigation or evaluation. The postponement was attributed to weather in operational summaries. Division records noted that the attack scheduled for January 22 was rescheduled to January 23 due to poor visibility. Webb's role in making that decision was not highlighted. The artillery battalion's war diary for January 22 contained a brief entry. Fire mission scheduled 600 postponed due to observation conditions. Mission rescheduled 23 Jan. No elaboration. No reference to command discussions or decision-making process. Infantry units recorded in their logs that the attack was delayed 24 hours for weather. The men who waited in staging areas that morning had no knowledge of the specific circumstances that caused the delay. They knew only that the artillery barrage did not commence as scheduled, and they were subsequently told to return to bivouac. The approval chain that had authorized the fire mission, from battalion through division, corps, and army, was not revisited after the cancellation. The authorization remained valid and was applied to the rescheduled mission on January 23. No additional approval was required. The mission was simply executed 1 day later than originally planned. Webb's written report to his battalion commander was filed with routine operational paperwork. It was not forwarded to higher headquarters. It was not identified as documenting a significant command decision. It was treated as a standard after-action summary following a postponed fire mission. The conversation between Webb and the division commander on the morning of January 22 was not recorded or transcribed. No written record exists of the division commander's decision to postpone the attack based on Webb's assessment. The decision was made verbally and implemented through subsequent orders to subordinate units. The fact that an attack approved by every level of command from battalion to army was canceled by a single lieutenant colonel's decision not to initiate a fire mission left no trace in historical records beyond the bare notation that weather caused a 24-hour delay. The complexity of the decision, the chain of communications, the command authority exercised, none of this was documented in a manner that would be preserved or analyzed. Marcus Webb continued to serve as an artillery forward observer through the Italian campaign. He participated in operations at Cassino, Anzio, and the advance toward Rome. He completed his tour in September 1944 and returned to the United States. He was discharged in November 1945 with the rank of colonel. He returned to civilian life in Virginia and worked as a civil engineer. He married in 1946 and had 2 children. He rarely discussed his military service in detail. When asked about the war, he mentioned that he served in Italy with the artillery. He did not describe specific missions or decisions. In 1969, he was contacted by a military historian researching the Rapido River crossing operations. The historian was compiling a detailed account of the January 1944 battles and requested interviews with participants. Webb agreed to be interviewed. The conversation lasted 90 minutes and covered general topics about artillery procedures and coordination with infantry. The historian asked about the January 22-23 operation specifically. Webb confirmed that he was the forward observer for that sector. He stated that the attack was delayed one day due to fog. He did not elaborate on his role in the decision to delay. The historian did not press for additional detail. The interview moved to other subjects. Webb died in 1987 at age 73. His military records are archived with the National Personnel Records Center. They contain standard documentation of his service, assignments, promotions, awards. No documents specifically address the events of January 22, 1944. The division commander who approved the postponement of the attack based on Webb's assessment retired as a major general in 1954. He died in 1972. His memoirs, published in 1968, discuss the Italian campaign in general terms. Rapido River operations are mentioned briefly. The January 22-23 timeline is described as a single continuous operation delayed by weather. The role of individual officers in decision-making is not addressed. The artillery battalion commander who received Webb's report in January 1944 was killed in action in France in August 1944. The battalion records he maintained were transferred to division upon his death. The records were subsequently archived. Webb's report from January 22, 1944, if it was retained in the battalion files, has not been located in accessible archives. The infantry soldiers who waited in staging areas on January 22, 1944, and then crossed the river on January 23, experienced the events as a single operation with a weather delay. In post-war reunions and oral histories, some mentioned the fog that morning. None identified it as a moment when a planned attack was canceled by an individual decision. It was remembered as bad weather that caused a postponement, an attack authorized by every level of command, approved by battalion, division, corps, army, planned in detail, rehearsed, equipped, staged, scheduled for 0600 hours on January 22, 1944, artillery ready, infantry ready. The entire mechanism of military operation aligned and prepared to execute. A forward observer sits in a concrete bunker. Fog covers the valley. He does not reach for the telephone. 0559 becomes 0600. The artillery does not fire. The infantry does not advance. The attack does not occur. One man responsible for one component of the operation assesses that conditions do not permit effective execution of his assigned task. He withholds action. The attack, approved by everyone, is canceled by one. The decision reverberates upward through command levels. Battery commanders wait. Battalion commanders inquire. Division commander calls. The attack is officially postponed. 24 hours later, under clear skies, the same plan is executed. The same artillery fires. The same infantry crosses. The operation proceeds as designed. The moment when the attack was canceled exists only in the gap between scheduled execution and actual execution. The gap is explained as weather delay. The individual decision that created the gap is not documented or preserved. The authorization chain that approved the attack remained intact. The attack simply occurred one day later than planned. Marcus Webb's hand on a table 6 inches from a telephone receiver at 0600 hours on January 22, 1944. The hand that did not reach for the receiver. The call that was not made. The mission that was not executed. The attack that was approved by everyone, then canceled by one. The fog lifted by midday. The valley became visible. The German positions were exactly where intelligence had mapped them. The next morning, in clear weather, the artillery fired. The attack proceeded. Heavy casualties were sustained. The operation failed. Whether the attack would have succeeded or failed if executed on January 22 in the fog is unknowable. The outcome that did not occur cannot be compared to the outcome that did occur. The decision prevented one sequence of events and enabled another. The difference is unrecorded. The silence is complete.